Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:46, I should say, PM, and a quorum of members is present, so the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby?
Here.
Mr. Helmer? Here. Ms. Konick? Ms. Schulz?
Here.
Mr. Seidel? Ms. Spindler?
Here.
Mr. Zelinski?
Here.
Ms. Konick and Mr. Seidel let me know they are unable to attend this evening, so then I would entertain a motion to recess to closed session.
I move to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, 1C, E, and F of the Wisconsin statutes to consider A, the approval of closed session minutes of June 9th, and B, the employment, performance, and compensation matters pertaining to staff.
A second.
I have a motion by Ms. Crosby and a second by Mr. Zelinski. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski? Mr. Helmer? Yes. Ms. Schulz?
Yes.
Ms. Spindler?
Yes.
We are moving into closed session. We'll return to open session around 7 o'clock.
Don't let the crowd freak you out. Scott, your clickers up there should be ready to go. Okay. Whenever we get to that point.
It is now 7:06 PM, and we are returning from closed session into open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. For all those who are able, please rise. And now, for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by providing the agenda to the city library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, and the Waukesha Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. Do we have anybody this evening for privilege of the floor?
No.
I do not have a message or announcement this evening, so we'll move into the administrative team report.
Yeah, so the first thing that I want to make mention is that we have been keeping our ear to the ground as relates to the state budget, because obviously that next biennial budget directly impacts our school funding for the next 2 years. Patrick is going to get into some of that detail as part of our budget presentation when we get to that point. We're certainly open to respond to any questions you might have, but just know that there are a lot of moving parts to that thing, and there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes that we may not be aware of, and it needs to be determined in the next coming days. So as soon as we find out more, we will keep you posted. And obviously, the budget that you're approving tonight is the preliminary budget. All that does is allows us to get our spending started for the next fiscal year. And it's basically just a temporary document that's, with as much of the information that we have right now to inform us, but you won't approve an original budget until October. So that's that. The other thing that I wanted to share was I attended the inaugural Miss Wisconsin event at New Berlin West on Saturday evening. I have not ever been involved in the pageant business before. I mean, I've seen some stuff like on TV, but let me tell you, like, we sold out. I think the place was sold out most every night because they had preliminaries on Thursday, they had Miss Wisconsin Teen on Friday, and then the actual Miss Wisconsin event on Saturday. It was very well attended. I'd like to give kudos to Patrick and Kevin Hansen, who were able to work with the Miss Wisconsin organization to kind of get this thing pulled together. And it was an incredible event. Quite honestly, I didn't ever look at my watch, but we left there, and I think it was 7:15, so it was like a almost 3.5 hour event. And it kept my attention, so that's usually my gauge that it was very entertaining, to say the least. So congratulations to Miss Racine, who won the inaugural event here in New Berlin. I think they've had it in Oshkosh for like the last 60 years, and yep, so this was the first year they've had it elsewhere since then. But again, great turnout. I think it's great for not only the school district to have all these folks in our incredible venue, but also, for the city of New Berlin to have all of these folks coming into the city, and hopefully, visiting our local businesses as well. So we'd like to commend them for that. Other than that, I have no other updates other than what we have on the agenda. Thank you.
All right, thanks. You wouldn't happen to have another Chromebook, this just lost power. Or a charger, yeah. Although I do have it printed out just in case, so. It fits this.
We've got one up in front of you, I believe.
Okay. All right, so next we have the district reports. There is not an incident report, but we've got an enrollment report, suspension report, and donation report. And since Mr. Seidel is not here this evening, I'll just read off our donation report. We have two. We have for New Berlin West Youth Football Club support a scholarship in the amount of $2,000. And also for New Berlin West, the Waterstone Bank is the donor to support a scholarship in the amount of $1,000. Thank you very much to our donors, we very much appreciate. Then we have our consent agenda, which includes notice, approval of minutes of the board meeting on June 9th, and financial reports. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Helmer and a second by Ms. Crosby to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. On to our regular agenda. First up on the regular agenda is the employment services update.
I would like to welcome and introduce our new Director of Employment Services, Scott Garner. Scott has actually been working with us since April as he transitioned into this new role. And then Scott has started working full-time, Scott, since June 11?
Yeah, the Monday after June 6th, whatever date that was.
Yeah. So Scott has familiarized himself as much as he's been able to since then. At the same time, he is still rather new to the district. So with that, so we do two presentations from the Employment Services Department every year. This one is going to be based on a lot of our survey data from our end-of-year survey. And then Scott will come back probably sometime in September to kind of give a general update of where we landed with staffing and so on. So at this time, I'll hand it over to Scott.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity here to present the 24-25 employee experience summary. We've got three topics we're going to talk about tonight. There we go. We're going to give you a quick health plan update. We're going to talk about the employee experience survey. And at the end, we're going to give you where we're at with the staffing update for the 25-26 school year. First, starting with our health plan update. I met with Jackie Wagner this morning, and we've kind of gone over the data. This is new to me, obviously, but I've reviewed that with her and certainly can hopefully speak to some of this. As you look at Centivo, it's our second year utilizing this. Now, Centivo is our insurance, essentially our insurer. We work with them on a regular basis. Started that last year, and this is our second year in. According to Jackie, it's performing as we thought, very similarly to as it did last year. So if you look at the data in the slideshow, the color coding, obviously 52% take up. The Wisconsin 2 high performance plan, and it breaks it down essentially. As you look at that, we have a high utilization of the plan, and I'm going to go over some of the things that here next that talk about what we do to prevent some of the claims costs. We have a near-site clinic. We work with Marathon Health on that. As you can see, we have eligible of 999 lives. That's employees and their dependents. We had a total of last year 1,939 total visits. We had 36% roughly of preventative visits with 67% repeat visits. I don't need to read all this to you, but that's just to say that we're doing our best and our employees are starting to utilize this Marathon Health near-site clinic as a way to, again, prevent major cost claims and a way for our employees to access easily healthcare without having to make appointments that are 6 months out, for example. They can just go and make the appointment and utilize the services. So it's a dual benefit to the district and employees. ATI, this is something that I did learn. One of the things that in my previous life as the HR director in Janesville, what we talked about is how do we direct staff to utilize services that are less expensive than, say, a normal service if you go to the clinic or a hospital. And so one of the things that New Berlin has done well is put these pieces in place. For example, orthopedics, physical therapy, those types of therapies are often given to specialists within the big box systems or the clinics. We have the opportunity here to utilize ATI, which then provides our therapy at a lower cost rate. Again, providing benefit to the staff member and not causing high cost possible claims to the district as we're self-insured. These just provide us the numbers, the total numbers. As you can see, it's obviously since its inception, or at least since 2021, the utilization has gone up, which is a good sign. Next, we're going to move on to the annual employee experience survey, and I just want to do a shout out to Danny Anderson who helped me with this. We use Qualtrics as our essentially vendor to put out the survey. Qualtrics is a great tool. It's a great platform to use to provide surveys to staff and then to analyze that data. We have, as a result then, looked at a 90% participation rate. And what that is our certified staff. So all of our teachers, all the ones with licenses, we had a 90% participation rate. We had a total of 500 responses with the certified at 90, all staff participations at 82%. And one of the questions that I think you might ask is, well, so what? Is that good? Is that bad? What does that mean? And if you look at the research, typically for mid-sized employers like ourselves, 7 to 80% is a good response rate for a survey for employees of our size. So if we look at 82, we're above average, I would say, based on that. And honestly, that is a great response rate, especially the 90% for certified staff. It shows they're engaged. They believe that things they say will make a difference here in the district, and they believe in the fact that we will act on that survey information. The top engagement questions, as I went through the survey and analyzed the data, these are the top three survey questions that we received a great deal of positive response. First of all, it's a great idea here to recommend the school district of New Berlin to both staff and to parents. They feel good about where they're at. It's a great place to work. The second is my work gives me a feeling of personal accomplishment. Now, it's interesting, the timing of this survey was at the end of the year, and for that to be one of the things that is a top response is pretty amazing to see. It shows that staff still feel good about what they're doing. They still feel invested about what they're doing, even at the end of the year when typically energy is low. So that's a good thing. And then finally, which is something we may expect, but it's good to see, I feel safe while I'm at work. I'm going to break it down for you for each of the responses now. So as you look, I gave you a lot of pictures, but essentially for those, I would recommend the School District of New Berlin to people I know as a great place to work. 84% of our staff would recommend our district for employment. Now, it's interesting, they neither agree or disagree, they're neutral. That means on any day they could flip the coin, or maybe it's when they took the survey, right? So it could be all the way up to 94%, depending on the day. But just so you know, that's a great positive result, and it's consistent with the trends we've seen over the last 4 years. If we look at my work gives me a feeling of personal accomplishment. We're at 85%. Again, that's a great response rate. We got 10% in the neutral category, only about 4% in the disagree or strongly disagree category, and it's on trend with where we've been for the last 4 years. So again, we're very consistent in performance relative to past surveys. We look at where I feel I'm safe while I'm at work. 92%, that's a great response. Whatever we've done in the district shows and helps people feel safe, whether that's through communication, measures that we have in the buildings to ensure safety. That includes then emotional safety. So you'll see that later on in the survey when we talk about trusting relationships. We're going to go there about employee well-being, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly. But again, we have the neutral category of 5%. So that gives us about 3% who are kind of on the fence-ish about safety at work, which is, again, it's an excellent result. Finally, we're going into employee well-being. These are several questions that comprise this category. I feel positive about myself. I have trusting relationships. I feel energized, meaningful recognition, and we'll talk about all those. I can manage my job responsibilities that promote a healthy work-life balance. Those are all the questions. So let's start out with I feel positive. 83% of our staff feel very positive about what they're doing at work. Feel positive about themselves and their impact at work. That's great. The trend line has, honestly, it's gone up just a little bit this year by 1%. If we look at, I have trusting relationships at work, and I got to tell you, and we all have worked or been a part of a group, right? It's important to have those people you can count on, those people when things get rough, you know you can vent to or talk with. We've got a great connection here in New Berlin. 86% of our staff feel like they have trusting relationships. That's pretty amazing. And 9% then are on the fence, but again, it's at the end of the year. Energy is a little bit low, and we'll talk about timing of surveys, but that's always a debate. We won't do it tonight, but that's always a debate. When's a good time for a survey? I feel energized at work. 65%. This result did not surprise me. In fact, it surprised me in the sense that it's so high. We took this survey in the end of May into June, and that is when it's hot. It's when the kids are at their wits' end. It's when teachers are starting to think about summer plans and what they want to do, but yet they have to keep their nose to the grind and get this done for kids. So if you look at that, 65%, again, you may think it's low, but it's right on trend with where we've been in the past years. I put an arrow next to the 24 because, again, flip of a coin, that could sway 24 points to the positive, and you're up to 89%. So depending on that, even if you split it, 12 to the negative and 12 to the positive, we're at 77%. So again, energy is still pretty high given the timing of the survey. If we look at a meaningful recognition, one thing about recognition, and we know this, at least in my experience doing surveys, is that recognition is a very personal thing. So I might think recognition as a verbal thank you. Great, I've been recognized. Excuse me. These new name tags, I have to learn how to clip mine instead of the magnets. Talk with my hands, I'm Italian, it works, right? So as we look at recognition, it's very personal. I might like verbal compliments. Somebody else might like written notes. Who knows? It might be public recognition. It all depends on the individual and how they've received it in the past and how they receive it. And so as you look at the recognition, at least we're in the positive. Over half, 57%, again, feel like they're being recognized for the work. 24% were on the fence. Again, that's one of those things where it depends on the day, right? Yes, sometimes we're hitting the mark, sometimes we're not, I would say, in that column. I can manage my job responsibilities in a way that enables a healthy work-life balance. This is also 64%. This is also a very personal type of situation. Everybody's situation is different. If you're like me, kids are out of the house, I have a little bit more time to balance work versus home. However, if you would ask me 15 years ago, kids were busy, middle school, taking them to traveling, this or that, dance, sports, you name it, it's a busy time for parents. So it just matters about where you're at in your kind of time of life and what choices and things you have going on in your personal life that talks about healthy work-life balance. And so based on those results, we have a positive result, 64% with 16% neutral. Yes.
Yeah, Scott, if you could go to the previous slide, please.
You bet.
So those of you, Amy and Janet, on the Personnel Committee, meaningful recognition was one of the sub-goals that the Personnel Committee focused on as part of, I believe it was one of my goals, and I'm not sure if it became a board goal, Janet, after all or not, but. Yeah, so we actually have the data to support, based, as we broke it down by all employees and certified staff, we wanted to see an increase. And we were able to do that, even though the full trend was at 57, the measure that we agreed upon was neither agree nor disagree was included in those numbers. And so we've actually gone up in that. And then the next slide, Scott.
Yep.
This healthy work-life balance was another goal that the Personnel Committee had determined as one of my goals as well as one of the board goals. And again, we did see a slight increase here as well. So these were the areas that we really focused on, and we have seen, we have met the goals, I guess I would say. But I will follow up with the board specifically as those, as we report back to the Personnel Committee, and then again, as part of my evaluation. So I'll hand it back over to you, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and perhaps all that data is to say, are we going to stay here in the district to work with these kids in Berlin? And the intent to stay, as we look at this survey result, 3+ years, 76% of our licensed staff intend to stay. 65% of our support staff, which is a high number in my opinion, intend to stay past 3 years. And I would say that's pretty significant. We need people to stay. They're invested in the community. They're invested in kids. The longer they stay, the more they're invested. And that's what we ultimately want to foster and grow here in New Berlin, a staff that is committed to kids, a staff that's going to stick around so that they consistently give good instruction with fidelity on a regular basis and service to kids. So if you look at that, 72% of all of our staff intend to stay. And so that says a lot about our district and the community that we're in. And it's gone up. I don't know what happened in 23, 24. It seems to be an anomaly there, but it's pretty consistent with where we've been in the past. We do have some opportunities for growth. We analyze that through the district comments. There's always a narrative or, essay question, if you will, of the survey. And what I did is pulled those results. Qualtrics allows us to do this, is to create a word cloud. And the bigger the word, the more it's mentioned in the responses from staff. And so our opportunities for growth, I picked 4. Compensation. Compensation and benefits is always going to be on this list. No matter what survey we give, when we give it, compensation and benefits are always going to be on the list because people always want to push for more. And who wouldn't, right? We would all say the same thing. So that's a given. Communication, this is a double-edged thing. You're going to see communication as an opportunity or things that we're doing well. So it's kind of a double-edged piece. But communication specifically when it relates to people, we have to direct people as to what to do. And at times we have to give them the curriculum. We have to direct them to support kids in a certain way. And at times that's a directive. And at times we have chance to communicate with them about that. And so typically when people respond, communication is an opportunity for growth. It's because either they didn't like the direction they were given, or they had the opportunity to communicate about it, but the direction was still given opposite of what they wanted, for example. So communication is one of those things that is going to be on that list as well. Time and workload, that goes to the work-life balance. Again, I would say that always people are going to look to try to find that balance. That's a personal choice, but as a district, what can we do and look at truly to help them feel like things are more balanced? And I know that Superintendent Garza is really trying to push staff and do initiatives to help that out. So, and then finally, the student focus, which is a good thing. We always want to do better for kids, and I think this reflects that, right? No matter what, whether it's instruction, whether it's in terms of supports for kids to improve their behaviors, their learning, you name it, I'm glad it's on there. That's a great sign that our staff want our kids to do better. That's also on our things that we're doing well, which you're going to see right now. I picked 4 things we're doing well. Collaboration and teamwork, specifically as a result, as you look at the teams within the teachers. But it's also, what I found different in this district is it's actually connected to leadership as well. Staff are very happy based on the comments, based on their experiences with leadership and how they collaborate and work together to do things for kids. It's a supportive environment. Again, that's evidence of leadership and teachers working together and other staff working together to make a good experience for kids. The student focus, we're doing that well. I mean, our results speak for themselves, right? Our achievement results speak for themselves. Again, we just continue that focus and do better for kids. That's what we can do. And then finally, communication is something we're doing well. So staff are feeling informed. They're feeling like they know what's going on across the district. They know what they need to do for kids. That's evident based on the results from the survey. As I said before, the opposite of the communication pieces are some of those directives and maybe disagreeing with some of the decisions made, but again, that's always a positive. So those are the survey results. Questions? I'm going to move on. If not, I'll save questions for the end. We're going to go into the licensed staff update. This is a very brief slide that I have for you tonight. But as of last week, Thursday, that's when I pulled this data, we had 24 licensed educator openings for the 25-26 school year to date. We had 6 new positions from that 24 added as 4K. We had 18 replacement positions. So that means somebody left and we're replacing those positions. I can tell you that 67% is changed because we filled a position today, and it's kind of a floating number, but we're going to continue to up that number to get to 100% by August, right? It's still, I know it seems late. It's late for hiring, right, for next year, but in every district, we're experiencing the same as every district, right? We have people that have life changes, and as you'll see, the primary reason for resignations are the life change moves, personal reasons, resignations. Some are going to other districts, not many, 2. There's 2 there, but there's those things happen, and so we expect that in the summer. And we always, the concern then is what positions are leaving and then how are we going to fill them? And I can tell you, we're on a good track right now to be able to fill those positions. Talk to me in August and you might see me biting my nails or sweating, but I'll tell you if that's a concern, for sure. Next steps, we're gonna pull the data by school. We're gonna share that information with the team. As a team, we're going to share that information. Principals will be made aware so they can work to better their individual schools. We're going to take action steps as a result, both building-wide and district-wide. And then I'll present in fall, as Joe mentioned, a final retention kind of report in the fall of 2026. Any questions?
I just have one, actually a couple, but the Marathon Health Clinic, where is that? Because I thought we were using Everside.
They were bought out.
Oh, they got bought out, okay. So it is the one on
They were bought out.
Marathon?
Yeah, they were bought out. They still haven't changed the sign. It still says Everside, but when you go in there, it's all Marathon Health.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that's been a work in progress. And again, yes, that's just a name change or a buyout change. Yep.
So now they have more locations.
Oh, good. The other question is from the survey data, are there like benchmarks or comparisons to other, like in the industry, you usually have benchmarks based on what sector you're in. Is there benchmarks for education for employee surveys?
So as I said, the participation rates are really the benchmarks we want to use, and 70 to 80% is a good benchmark for participation. Outside of that, each individual employer or business has its own unique culture and climate, so it's very difficult to compare apples to apples. What I can tell you is in my previous district, I saw a lot of the same things. The communication pieces for decisions to be, they want decisions that affect people's jobs is always something that comes up. I can tell you that One good thing I noticed is that collaboration with leadership and such showed up here pretty prominently as a positive thing. That's not always the case. So those are kinds of the things that it's anecdotal, but because we're unique to ourselves and the people within in our staff know that, it's hard to compare our data to somebody else's.
Okay, and then a last one for the action plans. Is that something you can present to us when you guys finalize those?
Yes, with,
Yeah, what we can do is, I don't know exactly when those will be finalized. I mean, I think they will be sooner than later, but if we have at least a good draft when Scott presents his data for retention in September or October, we'll add some slides as it relates to that as well.
Okay.
But just know though, Amy, that this last year, based on the Personnel Committee, we focused those plans based on the goals that we had come up with. So, work-life balance and staff recognition were the two goals, and then we had action plans set within those. So, I think part of it may be having the Personnel Committee meet once we can give a recommendation as to what we suggest we focus on, but I don't want to be heading this way if the Personnel Committee and the board wants us heading in a different direction.
Yeah, I think we saw some positive results in those two areas. So I think that's probably why the 90% participation is that they're seeing action taken from the survey.
all right, thank you.
All right, so next up is the presentation and approval of the 2025-26 preliminary budget.
Yeah, so we will have, well, there are two documents. One, Patrick will present a summary of the document that's been attached in board docs that has more of the detail, and that's again in board docs. And we've taken a summary of that, and that's what you're going to find in the presentation tonight. Again, what we need tonight is approval so that we can begin our spending for the next fiscal year. All final approvals are done through the process of an annual meeting and budget hearing in September, and then approval of the actual budget will happen in October. So with that, and again, these are all preliminary numbers based on the best that we have, but there are a lot of unknowns. So with that, I'll hand it over to Patrick.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Yeah, this is the first year of a biennial budget, so the unknowns are a little bit more than, for example, last year. Joe said, indicated the intent of the preliminary budget. Statutorily, what we have to do is show the board's intent to present a budget and set fiscal priorities for the upcoming year. Essentially, I'm telling you what we're basing our budget numbers on. And then the final is done in October. You will see adjustments at each step of the way. So the next time you see the budget's going to be in September, you will note changes, and I will bring those to your attention. And then when we do the October budget, you will see changes to that as well. These are three of the key assumptions that we based the preliminary budget on. We have an increase of 24 FTE for the purpose of the revenue limit. Some of that is 4K, the addition of 4K. Another big component of that is we had 2 years in the past, 2 past years where we had 4,312 students, 2 years in a row. And that was a low, at least since I've been here. And one of those years is falling off, and we're adding a year of projected 4375. So we're always working on a 3-year rolling average. When a low year falls off and we have a high year added, that helps us greatly. Because of the unknowns with the state budgeting process, we decided to build our preliminary budget based on a 15% reduction in state aid. That is the maximum reduction that the state can reduce our aid. And we'll go through some of the components that go into state aid in a future slide. We also are, by the last biennial budget, able to increase our revenue limit by $325 per pupil. Okay, and so more of this information is explained in greater detail in that budget document. Other assumptions, we had the approved increase of 2.91% and the benefits associated with that. We did have some staffing increases related to special education and other positions, and like 4K is one of those. We have transportation and utility increases. Obviously, transportation is per contract with Durham, which we are, when I first got here, our increases were contracted at 6. Our contracted increases now are at 3. Again, more detail can be found in that budget document. As Joe alluded, we are very early in this process. During the budget process, we try very hard to control what we can, predict what we can control. And to the best of our ability, we predict the variables based on a lot of conversation, our past, the history that we have in working with the state. And when we get updates from the state, that helps us fill in some of these predictions. Variables, the state aid distribution is a variable, enrollment is a variable. Equalized property values are variables. We can predict, but we cannot, we don't have a clear indication as to what those are going to be. Then we have the dance between the state legislators and the governor's office over the state budget. You may or may not have heard some of the information in the news right now. Typically, the state wants to have this budget done mid-July, and sometimes they meet that mark, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. We have had years, very few, but there are years where we have to do a final budget before the state has settled on their budget, in which case we have to use last year's numbers. So that happens very infrequently, but it's always a possibility. School funding levels, and this is something that we talked a little bit about last year, but the amount of money that the state puts in the budget for education is some certain amount of money. That means that there's a specified pot of money, and when it's gone, it's gone. And there are some districts in the state that receive higher amounts of aid than others. We are considered in New Berlin a property-rich district. We have about, I think, $7 billion in property value. There are other districts that are considered a property poor district. The amount or the value of property per student is lower. They get more state aid. So, for example, MPS passed a huge referendum a couple of years ago, and they have been taking bigger scoops out of the state aid bucket. And every time they do that, there's less left for everybody else. Now, think of, just in our area from, MPS, West Allis, West Milwaukee, Tosa, Racine I think is looking at another big referendum. Those are all things that are going to take more and more money out of state aid, which means there is going to be a smaller amount left for all of the other districts. And we are doing everything that we can to anticipate these changes now before the final budget in the fall. We are another district that is unique in that we have a fair amount of debt within the operating budget. We presented this to you last year. So in fiscal '25, we had $3.6 million that we were spending on debt for like the Ronald Reagan construction. We did some major projects at West. I think there were a couple of other schools that got a little bit, and we also had some ESCO energy service projects. Our debt and principal and interest payments last year were 3.6. This year, that's going up 1.7 million. And that has to be taken off of the top of our revenue limit, which means we're going to have 1.7 less dollars for general education. Now, you can see the history, or the future of this, and this is something that we can predict because we control the debt is controlled by our borrowing. Next year, 26, 27, 27, 28, each of those years it'll drop by 200,000, and by 2029 we will get to a much more controllable amount of debt, back to 3.6 million, and then look at 2030. That is the year that Joe and I have been waiting for. Him longer than I, but we are waiting with a great anticipation for debt service of $520,000. Now, this goes into our strategic finance plan. We talked a little bit about this last year, decided to put it off for a year. Again, looking at the information that we had, or we were getting from the state because of the second year of the biennium, we pushed this off. During the early 2020s, we were able to strategically build up our fund balance. Unlike other districts, we did not spend all of the ESSER reimbursements. They're reimbursements. It wasn't money that we got to make new expenditures. It was a reimbursement for the expenditures that we had. We put those dollars in fund balance because we knew that, for example, you go back here, we knew 2026, 2027, 2028, and 2029 were coming down the pipe. So we have the ability, we've done the work to bridge our deficits through the operating budget. And there are two ways that we can do that. We can use the operating budget or use fund balance to bridge that gap every year until we get to 2030. The problem with that is every year we will likely receive the maximum reduction in state aid of 15%. The other option that we have is a one-time funding for capital maintenance, the Fund 41, where we move $6 million into that fund, and then we don't have to put significant dollars in it year after year. That is what the administration feels is the best option for the district. What we're doing, remember earlier we talked about trying to find the things that we can have some control over. And by doing this one time, we are going to be able to mitigate future reductions in state aid.
We actually brought this to the board, this very question to the board earlier this year. And the board at the time did agree with us that rather than year after year getting that 15%, potential 15% state aid hit every year, which means less state aid means more local property taxes instead, that we would take that hit in one year, as opposed to every other year. And there were financial implications as a result of that. And again, much of it was for local property taxpayer impact. So again, we built this budget based off of what, again, we believed was in agreement with the board at that time, and suggesting the one-time spend down or drawdown of fund balance. Patrick?
This is not the first time that the district has done something like this. They did it, Joe, maybe you can help me, I don't know how many years ago it was.
20, when you look at the fund balance stock, it'll pop
Yeah.
up there. Yep.
But what I can tell you is, since the 2017, 2018 school year, the district has increased their fund balance by $12 million. That's significant for a negative tertiary district. So good planning and a little bit of luck has helped us be able to do what we've done so that we can bridge this gap with regards to our debt. This particular slide, and again, very simply, this is a graphical representation of what happens, how state aid works. If you are a property-rich district and your property values go up, your state aid can go down. If your property values go down, then your state aid will essentially go up. But it's one pot of money, and there is some certain amount of money in that pot. And what I can tell you right now is, in the state legislature, in the Joint Finance Committee, they have chosen to not put any more money in that pot for public education. So the pot of money is the same as the pot of money was last year, and there are going to be increases in the draw from that pot. So that means a little unknown.
I will say, I would like to add as well that when you see the levy impact that will have on us, what's disappointing from my perspective is, and again, there's still a lot of moving parts. This is what we're hearing again outside of those rooms where there's a lot of talks being had. But when nothing changes in that pot of money, that naturally means local property taxes are going to go up. That is a byproduct of not adding new money to that pot. Local taxpayers will bear that burden. On top of it, what's extremely disappointing is that there is a massive surplus, which is our tax dollars sitting in Madison right now. And I'm extremely disappointed that they've not looked at that actual big pot of money to say, what can we do with that? Taxpayers have already paid that in. Why isn't that being taken into account? Again, I'm not a legislator, will never claim to do so or ever be one. Because again, so just know that that work does impact us here and each of you as a property taxpayer. Patrick.
Just again, a quick summary. Our first option, draw down 1 year at a time. That is going to result in state aid reductions. A one-time is our best option to mitigate state aid reductions. And I'm going to repeat, that's our best option to mitigate state aid reductions. We can't control what the legislature does. We can't control what the governor does. We can't control the amount of money that the other 419 districts in the state pull out of the state aid bucket. But if we're doing our due diligence and doing everything that we can to control the situation, I believe that is the fiscally responsible way to proceed. A little bit out of, regarding Fund 41. History, we started this in 2022. We were going to fund it at $1 million. The board asked us to fund it at 1.2, which we did, but we actually increased it for 3 years to 2.2. And what our plan is for the 2026 through the 2029 is to continue to levy a small amount in Fund 41 just to keep that fund aging. But the bulk of the funding come from a one-time investment of $6 million into that fund. And that will fund our capital maintenance plan until we reach the magical 2030 fiscal year. Tax levy and the impact. Thank you, Joe, for greasing the skids a little bit on this one. I am going to repeat. This is a very conservative approach to what our tax levy could possibly look like. We are estimating a small increase in our property values. The tax levy, the overall levy, is increasing by 9%. But the change in the equalized value is, even though the levy is increasing by 9, the tax mill rate is increasing by 7. We're predicting 7.12. That would be a 42 cents a thousand increase. That would bring our tax rate up to $6.31 per thousand. It's $142, I think, on a $350,000 home. This is a large increase, and we can go back to this, but here are a few statistics on this. 147 gross on a $350,000 home, but our tax rate in the last 10 years has, or last 15 years has dropped 10 times. And if you look at the last 5 years, and I know this is a number that is hard to swallow, but in the last 5 years, our mill rate has decreased by over 27%, and inflation has been 23%. That's a 50% swing. Inflation has been going up, and we have been able to lower our tax levy. As much as this is a bit of a shocking number, we've done well. And these tax levies will continue to fluctuate. We cannot expect, our tax levy is among the lowest in Waukesha County. There are 4 districts, one of which we throw out because they have 11,000 students. But there are 3 districts that are about the same size that are all neck and neck with regards to their tax levy. And that's Mukwonago, Muskego, and New Berlin. We received about $14 million in aid last year. They both received nearly $30 million in aid. And we have $2 billion more in property value than what those 2 districts have. So those are things that are going to make it difficult for us to manage our mill rate. And we have still managed it over the past 5 to 7 years. And at this point in time, that is my presentation for the preliminary. Obviously, we didn't dig real deep, but that's not the purpose of the preliminary. But what I would really like to have from the board is if there are things you want greater clarification on when we get to the annual meeting, please let us know so that we can incorporate that into our annual meeting booklet.
Hey, Patrick, quick question. This won't change well, I thought they just did all the reassessments on a bunch of houses in New Brown, so wouldn't we expect the equalized value to go way up?
Equalized value and property assessments are two completely different things, and they are totally unrelated.
Okay,
The property assessments are what the city uses to actually tax you. The property value, the equalized value is a number calculated by the Department of Revenue, and it's the general value of what they assume the entire city
City is worth.
which is property and there's a lot of extra stuff that goes into that. It's a confusing thing, and every year property taxpayers, or I should say, the city, they want us to change over to assessed values. And the reason they use equalized values is because they're trying to bring balance between property-rich districts and property-poor districts. And that's why, thus the equalized value. They're trying to balance out taxes and state aid.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So we said this was conservative, so numbers are probably worst-case scenario now?
You are correct. We would rather come back to you with good news than come back to you with bad news. It is in the last board meeting of September.
September 22nd.
And we will, at that point in time, we will have one of the three key pieces of information that we need to settle the original budget, and that is the third Friday count. On the 1st of October, we receive the equalized property values, and then on the 15th of October, the state certifies the state aid amount. And then I scramble to put a budget together so that we can approve it by the end of the month. 25% into our fiscal year already.
We are asking approval.
Is there any other discussion? Or actually, yeah, we could move directly to the motion. Do I have a motion to approve the preliminary budget as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Helmer, a second by Ms. Crosby to approve. Any discussion now? Nope. Okay, then hearing none. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. Then we have discuss approved school lunch price increase.
So we are bringing this to you at the request of our Director of Nutrition Services. And after consulting with Patrick and myself, we do believe it's an appropriate time to recommend an increase. We have not seen an increase in the school district since 2013.
That's correct.
It's been a long time. And we've navigated several things since then. It's, been 12 years. One of them was high inflation for a while. Then we were hit with the pandemic. And then during that pandemic, extremely high inflation. And now we're at a point where we believe it's appropriate for us to come in and request an increase. Patrick, can you give the details of the increase that we are looking for?
So we are asking for approval of a 35-cent increase for each meal, each full-pay meal. That does not increase the reduced price, and obviously free is still free. In the last, or since July, 9 months, we have had a higher expenses than revenues. Much of that is because of the loss of some of the additional funding sources that have sunset. And I asked Cindy to bring me a recommendation based on the numbers, because we did have increased participation, but our costs are just, without some of the programs, our costs are just finally catching up with us.
So for 2020, well, the end of the school year, what was that budget? Did we lose money in that fund? Because I know before we were making more than we were spending. So what I'm trying to find out is like, are we upside down? Is this the first year we're upside down, or do we doing this because we think next year we're going to be upside down?
We're upside down right now, but not by a lot. We may actually make up, again, I shouldn't speculate. We still have to finish June, and we're still behind. Some of the aids that we get are a month to a month and a half behind, and so we're upside down right now. The issue is because of inflation, because the increase in across the board, whether it's supplies or food or labor, the state has they have a ceiling for school food service, that if you get above that amount, and it's 6 months of operating cost. If you get above that amount, then you have to come up with a plan to spend down. We've been under that for, I want to say something like 10 years, not quite, maybe 8. And right now, they've changed that amount, and so we actually are below that 6 months of operating. So.
I want to just point out a couple things, and then we'll go to Matt. Please note that Fund 50, which is our the budget that we're talking about here, is completely separate from the budget that you just heard of from Patrick. So this is an isolated budget, and that operates within itself. So we can't lose. If we're losing money, it doesn't mean we're losing money in the general operating budget. If we're gaining money, it doesn't mean that I can take that money and use it to spend in our general budget. So it's a budget within itself. We have successfully navigated that budget for many years, but we are now at the point where, again, not only did you have grants sunsetting, but also a lot of the COVID dollars that were helping support that program have gone away. So that kind of deferred it. We probably would have come to you earlier in 2020, 2021 with this recommendation, even after that only being 8 years, but now we're at 13 years since the last requested increase. So again, just a separate, isolated budget.
Good, you answered one of my 2 questions.
Go ahead then, Matt.
I was going to ask if it was included in the budget we just approved. The second question, 35 cents, what does that represent percentage-wise? What's the current meal cost? I should know that.
$2.65, I think.
I should know this as a parent.
I think it's like $2.65.
Yeah,
I don't know why that number's jumping in my
I
head.
think you're correct. It's 265, so.
So it's like
I
a
didn't do the math.
15% increase?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous that large of a jump in 1 year. I'd rather spread it over 2 or 3 years if possible. That's why I want to see some numbers of what your final expenses are, to see, are we in dire straits to go all the way to that number, or can we do it over 2 or 3 years?
Well, again, I think dire straits
No.
paints a very, very dark and dismal picture.
Yeah.
We have fund balance for us to be able to manage this, but our fund balance is, for example, this year, our fund balance is going to go down, and because of inflation, our fund balance will last a shorter period of time. We were going to bring this to you last year But there was a funding source that was unsure, and we didn't bring a recommendation last year because of what you just said. We raised prices a quarter, and then we get this additional funding and, didn't need it. But we lost a significant grant this last year, so.
We're going to need a motion. So I don't know if anybody wants to make a motion to approve a 35-cent increase for each full paid meal.
Do we need to vote on it tonight? I mean, we're missing 2 members too. I'd like to,
Yeah, we don't,
you guys don't need approval tonight, do you?
yeah, when do you need approval?
We don't, but,
School, probably a couple months before next school year, right?
well, we need to get the word out sooner than later.
Right.
For all the reasons that you just mentioned. So whether it's 10 cents or 35 cents, we're going to need to get the word out. The other thing too that I just want to remind the board is that when we were experiencing some financial difficulties, we were focusing on user fees, right? And so we are kind of following that mantra of not, if regardless of the percentage increase, which quite honestly, we increased school fees and class fees significantly at one point. Now, that was for the operational fund, but again, it's just, we were just following that mantra of, and yes, again, we would have brought this to you sooner. Actually, our nutrition services director preferred that we would come to you in January instead of now. I didn't think that was appropriate to ask families to do that for budgeting purpose for the, mid-year. And so that's why we're waiting till now, but it's up to the board. I mean, what questions do you want us, because Patrick, is there any detail in the budget booklet that would provide more information within Fund 50, or are those still anticipated numbers?
Those are still anticipated
Unaudited?
numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they look like it's 2.1 in expenses and 2.1 in revenue. So it looks like it's balanced on that. That's what I'm curious.
Right.
I mean, like I said, ideally, I'd like to do 15 cents this year and 15 cents next year, as long as we're not in the red.
So we're just talking lunch here, correct? Lunch.
Yes.
So my math tells me that's about a 13% increase and $1.75 a week or $63 a year, if you're talking 9 months. This would impact each parent $60 per child per year.
Yeah, and I guess my kids aren't in school anymore, but as a parent, I would rather have it once rather than like, oh, they're raising it again, oh, they're raising it again. I'd rather just have it once, and that's what I know I'm going to have to pay for going forward then.
And I have a quick question. You said this hasn't been raised for how many years?
Since 2013.
So 2013, and I would assume, we probably don't know what other districts have done, but you would think with everything that's raising, I think that's pretty reasonable, 35 cents. And I'm with Amy. I would rather just be at one raise and then you don't see it for a while.
And if you were to average it over the last 12 years, it's
Right.
about 1% retroactively. Not that it matters for those that still have kids in the district, but. And again, that's our recommendation, but this is up to the board, whatever the board wants.
Well, if we want some finalized numbers, I would think we only have the July 28th meeting, and we could hold off in voting until July 28th when we have the other members and.
I don't think we'll have solid numbers by then either.
No? Okay.
Our final audit is not going to be completed until, they're not going to be back in the district until August.
Well, I mean, I'll just wait till the other two are here in July. But they won't have the numbers he said, yeah.
Can I just make a motion and see if it passes or not?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, you can make a,
I move to approve the school lunch price increase of 35 cents per lunch.
I have a motion by Ms. Crosby and a second by Mr. Zelinski to approve the lunch increase by 35 cents for each full paid meal. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion doesn't pass. We have two. We got 3 out of 2. Wait, do we need? 3 out of 5, yeah, we don't have a majority.
Well, you have a majority of the,
Well, we have a
Of the-
majority of people here, but.
right, and that's, I think, that
That
is
does what
the,
count. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, because we have a quorum, so.
Yep.
So motion passes, okay. All right. Then we have our WASB renewal. And so there is the invoice that is there, and I had asked Ann when it was due. So there's no actual due date on it, but we assume it's for the 2025-26 school year, which starts July 1st. So thoughts on that? Do we want to renew? Because I know we talked a little bit about that before.
so I guess if, before the
Yeah,
the
give us
board
some
chairs, I guess I share some concerns that some of the board members have related to the WASB's position on many things. Now, what do they provide us where I've recommended moving forward with them in the past? They provide, I guess, would you consider free legal services, but that's part of the membership. They provide policy support or document support, which we've used in the past. They give you a discount for the events that they host, which we have gone to their events that they've hosted. Does that equate to almost $11,000? I've not done the calculations, but I do believe just in the legal consultation alone, we do make that up. But in the same vein, there have been other options that have presented themselves in the state of Wisconsin that have not been there as an option previously. There are organizations that work closely with the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, which I am closely connected with. Janet, Matt's been to their events. We have a mutually beneficial working relationship. I'm not sure, though, that the organization that is a potential alternate is ready for districts to the level that we would need. And so I guess I would like to spend more time to work with Janet before we say yes to determine if we should move forward with WASB or not. So I would recommend holding off until further notice, until Janet and I, and we've been working with folks behind the scenes already, but I just don't feel comfortable like I have in the past suggesting why we recommend it. I've got some reservations now too.
Real quick, is this the invoice from last year?
It's for the upcoming school year.
Okay, because this is 2025 district. No, like the invoice just says 2025 district. That's why I was curious. So I didn't know if this was actually paying for last year's or, okay.
Yeah, I bet they start with the fall 2025.
The policy help that they provide, doesn't Neola do that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so sometimes, if I may, like, for example, we've had board members or even us where we may have disagreed with Neola. It's nice to go to WASB rather than to pay our legal counsel to, at whatever rate it is compared to WASB's rate. It's always nice to have that other option, but we predominantly do not use them for policy and procedure support.
Do we have an estimate of how many hours we did use them for legal, and what that would cost if we used our own legal?
Yeah, and again, I just anecdotally was coming up in my mind, how many times did I call, how many times did I have Ann call, how many times did Nick, our former Director of Employment Services call? Again, just generally speaking, I do think it equates to this amount, but I still have reservations at this time.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was less or if it was the same if we called our own legal.
And I can say I have not called them in years. I probably, during COVID was the only time, and I have not called them since.
And we have not also, I think we've done a good job with Janet and others as far as like ramping up, like with the new board member onboarding, like we do that ourselves now, which I believe is actually better than what they have to offer, because it doesn't provide their lens as opposed to our local lens, which I think is important. So again, that was something that we had used in the past that I don't believe we are. So I have not taken that into consideration, but I don't know that it would be
Matt,
appropriate.
did you go? I think you said you went. Did you go to the WASB orientation?
I did.
Oh, you
It's
did?
in Muskego High School.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, so I mean,
apologize.
they do send out I think as long as you're a member, they will send your new board members the invite, and it's up to the new board members whether they go or not.
And did you find it fruitful, Matt? I guess is the question. Okay, so he attended, right?
I did not find it.
On the record, I'm not sure I found it so fruitful.
It was very long, and they could have probably done it in half an hour, and they did it in 2 hours.
It was more of their services are available
Yeah.
to you, and then they're to help if you have any questions. That's pretty much what I got out of that entire 2-hour session.
Ideally, this would become like $5,000 and they would shrink some of what they do and some of the money they spend. And I think we've talked before too, that we don't love a lot of the stances that they've taken on a lot of things too. And I think it would be a good, I mean, even if we spend $1,000 more, I think it's a good message to send to them that we haven't found as much value in it.
This wouldn't be the first time our school board did not work with them. I do believe there should be an alternative though for you all, or at least for Janet as the board president. And I do believe there's somebody out there. It's just a matter of vetting that a little further. And then even just committing to that is TBD. So, because as far as costs go with that alternative option, and again, are we going to get our bang for buck there, Mitch, as well? That's what we need time to work on.
Okay, I support you guys looking into this further.
As far as like the state convention, that is a WASB type sponsored event. Would members of the administration or board members still go to that?
Yeah, we just wouldn't pay the
Board
membership
members?
cost, is my understanding.
Okay, not that I would want to go again. Last year it was not very helpful.
Correct.
Okay, so it's still, you're better off.
We're still able to
You're still better
present,
off.
which I encourage our administrators to present what we're doing. So we would still present, we would still attend, maybe not to the degree that we have in the past, but we would just pay a little more, is my guess.
All right, so we'll bring this back to a future meeting.
Yeah, my suggestion is no action at this point, and Janet and I will keep you posted.
Okay, all right then. Then we have action on items discussed in closed session, so we do have one.
I move to approve the employment services report as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Spindler and a second by Ms. Crosby to approve the employment services report as presented. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. I hope were you asking if we needed a motion? Because it's not listed as an action item, so we could. But do we need a motion to say we're Well, I mean, it just doesn't say that it's an action item, but, I mean, I think technically anything on the agenda could be an action item. So if we wanted to be formal, we could actually do a motion to say, postpone the vote to a future, just,
Well, that way we can just send that right to WASB,
yeah. Okay,
just letting them know.
yeah. Okay, do I have a motion then to postpone voting on the WASB renewal for a future unspecified date?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Helmer, yeah, I know. A second by Ms. Crosby. Is there any more discussion on this? Okay. So then all those in favor of postponing this vote, raise your right hand. Motion passes. All right, so then on to our future meetings and dates. Board meetings are generally held the second and fourth Mondays, beginning at 7:00 PM in Conference Room E at district offices, which is right here, unless otherwise noted. So we do have one meeting in July, July 28th, and then the next ones are August 11th and August 25th. And we do have an important date to remember. That is July 4th, New Berlin 4th of July Family Festival. And the Education Foundation New Berlin will be running the East Tent, so please stop by. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Helmer and a second by Ms. Crosby to adjourn. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned.